All right, let's get the program started. Good afternoon, everyone. Keep eating. It's okay. I don't mind you eating while I'm talking. I'm Pat Pierce, and I chaired the 2014 Champions of Women Committee, which was part of the NCAA Women's Final Four that was here in Nashville last year. The organizing committee was responsible for getting this program going. So I want to welcome you to our 2015 Music City Girls Lead graduation program. You know, this is our third class of girls going through the program. We've had 78 girls, counting the girls today, graduate from the program, and we are so proud of every single one of them. This is really a legacy program of the Women's Final Four because it continues on even after the basketball games are over, because they were over last year. And we think it's one of the best programs in the country, and we believe that the NCAA feels the same way because they think that our program is well designed, and we've had so many successful young women come through the program. And I want to recognize Linda Peakshack, who is Executive Director of the Andrews Institute here for leadership here in developing the program and serving as a faculty member and a mentor for the program. And Melanie Matthews, Melanie is over here, who is our Music City Girls lead coordinator. And she's been our organization person, and she's coordinating and communicating with the girls, and she's just been great to work with. Thank you very much. And you know, you have to have people that really put their all into the program, and Linda and Melanie have really been the heart of the program, and we're just so grateful to you. Now, an important part of the program every year is to have women in the community serve as mentors for the girls, and we're really fortunate to have some of our mentors here. The mentors have come through during the classes and have participated in the class discussions all along through the classes, but we do have some here. So I'd like to ask, if you're a mentor, please stand. Okay, let me introduce Lolita Tony, Anita Genius, Karen Williams, Representative Dawn White, and Susan Huggins. We're so happy to have you with us, and thank you for giving us your time. Now, let's move along. I'm going to ask Linda Peakshack to come up and introduce Emily Reynolds, who is our speaker. We're really in for a treat, so I'll turn the podium over to Linda.
Welcome to all of you to Lipscomb and to the Music City Girls Lead graduation. I pulled a point of personal privilege in order to introduce our speaker today because I've known her since both of us were in our mid-20s in Washington. And don't worry, I'm not going to tell all those stories. Emily Reynolds is so perfect for the graduation speaker for Music City Girls Lead because she exemplifies all of the areas that we focused on in the courses that we've looked at over the last 3 weeks with you, or the last 3 sessions with you. And let me tell you why that is. When I met Emily, when we were in our mid-20s in Washington, she was working for the Republicans. She was working for Howard Baker, our legendary senator from Tennessee, who went on to be majority leader of the Senate and then the chief of staff for President Reagan. And Emily embodied then what you studied, and that is the ability to reach across party lines, the ability to reach across the boundaries that might separate us. And I was working for the Democrats at the time, and so we were able to work together on several different projects. Now, we might have been able to do that not only because we were inclined to believe that maybe the other guy is right. Remember, we talked about that? The person across the desk from you, the person that you are trying to collaborate with, you need to listen because, as Howard Baker always said, the other person just might be right. So Emily embodied that. The other reason I think we worked together really well, and this story I will tell, is that we both sang together in a bluegrass band. It was made up of reporters who covered the White House and Congress, and since it was made up of reporters, it was called The Informed Sources. And Emily was the star. I was just a backup singer, but Emily was the star because she sings a mean Patsy Cline. As we moved through our careers, I stayed in touch with Emily, and I was delighted when she achieved a real pinnacle in terms of a Senate staffer when she was named the Secretary of the Senate while working with Senator Frist when he was Majority Leader. For those of you who don't know, this is the highest position within the Senate of a non-senator working with the elected officials there. And you will see from the bio you have in front of you all of the different things she did. But it shows the respect for her talent and for her ability to collaborate and work with both Democrats and Republicans that she was given that position. So she embodies that collaboration that you studied. She also embodies giving back, and in her current position, she is the vice chair of the Tennessee Board of Regents. Many of you want to go into education, and she has a passion for education, which was also acknowledged by the Nashville Education Foundation when they named her to their Hall of Fame in 2012. For those of you who don't know, she is a product of Nashville schools, as many of you are, and she has used that as a foundation for her amazing success. Most recently, she was the Senior Vice President for TVA, working again across the aisle to help protect the brand and the funding for TVA in the U.S. Senate and the U.S. Congress, and also undertaking the big challenges that TVA faced during the time that you were there. I am proud to call Emily my friend. I am proud to call her a role model for all of you and for many of us, and I am especially proud that she agreed to address you today. Emily.
Thank you all. So Linda promised she wasn't going to tell those stories, but she had to let the Patsy Cline thing. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing today. If you notice, I did not, in fact, give up my day job, and there may well be a reason for that. Gosh, it is really my honor to be with you all today. As Linda said, we've known each other for a few years now. And it's so neat when your paths cross again with people throughout your life. You never know who's going to turn back up in your life or back in your hometown, and that's been very special. Pat's career and credentials also speak for themselves, and what a magnificent job she has done in running this very special opportunity. So I'm the one who's honored to be here with you all today and really just to have a conversation for the next few minutes. Because of what I did as Secretary of the Senate, if you guys don't mind, I want to share just a little bit of a history lesson with you, because I think it's always important for us to know, as you all move forward with the exciting things going on in your life, how all of us as women, if you will, got to where we are today. And there's an incredible story in American government and politics about the roles women have played through the years. So history is always a pretty good place to start and gain perspective. If you look at Abigail Adams, First Lady of the United States, wife of the second President of the United States, John Adams. He wasn't always the most forward-thinking gentleman back in that day and time, but she was a very forward thinker about women and the roles they could play in the life of this young country. And she pressed her husband constantly, believing that if we increase learning opportunities for women in America, we could increase the number of accomplished women in this country. She won him over time. And Adams once wrote that he believed that women could secure entire generations from want and contempt. So he became a believer over time. The young Frenchman, Alexis de Tocqueville, traveled this country for about 9 months in 1831, 1832, and compiled a series of essays, a book that if you haven't seen already, you're likely to see at some point in your educational career, Democracy in America. And de Tocqueville wrote, "If I were asked to what the singular prosperity and growing strength of the American people ought mainly to be attributed, I should reply, to the superiority of their women. So he was a very forward thinker in 1831, 1832. So it's hard to believe, if you fast forward about 60 years to President Grover Cleveland, there's a movement around women's rights. There's the suffragette movement is beginning to take form. And yet Grover Cleveland made the comment that for the life of him, he couldn't understand why any sensible or responsible woman would want the right to vote. Remarkably enough, the territory of Wyoming had already given women the right to vote. Now, it was not for altruistic reasons. What was happening out west? Men were flocking to the west to seek their fame and fortune. And what did they need? Wives. And how did you get women to move west in those tough conditions? You gave them the right to vote. The state of Kansas was remarkably progressive. By the end of the 19th century, in the late 1800s, the state of Kansas had about 15 women serve as mayors of small towns and cities across the plains. There was one woman, her name was Susanna Medora Salter. She was running for mayor of her town, Argonia, Kansas. And she was asked by one of the gentlemen in town, why would she want to go down in that dirty cesspool of politics? And her response, maybe we can help clean it up. There was another group of women who served as mayor of yet another small town in Kansas. The town elected an all-female government. By the time they exited office, they had balanced the budget of the town that was running a deficit. They had a $100 surplus at the end of their term. They had enforced the laws of prohibition. They had installed gas lights, and they had widened all the streets. And guess what? They were overwhelmingly reelected to another term in office. So they were progressive and believed in good government. So for me, as Linda mentioned, our time in the U.S. Senate was very special. It really kind of formed my whole career. It was a tremendous growth opportunity for me personally, as I know it was for Linda, and really charted our course in ways that we couldn't have dreamed in that day and time. And in my role as secretary, I had the Senate historian, the Senate curator, were part of our office. So I came really to love and respect the history of the Senate. And one thing I learned that I had not known before is that the first woman who served in the Senate was from Georgia. 1922 was the year. She served a whopping 24 hours. She was appointed to the job, once again, not for altruistic reasons. The governor of Georgia was in a tough re-election. Women had just been given the right to vote. And he had this bright idea that if he put a woman in that vacancy, even just for a day, that it might help him with the women folk back at home. Well, he lost. So he didn't quite get what he thought out of the deal. But Rebecca Latimer Felton went to the floor of the United States Senate in her one day in office and made a very prophetic speech to the men in that chamber. When the women of this country come in and sit with you, you will get ability. You will get integrity of purpose. You will get exalted patriotism, and you will get unstinted usefulness. Very prophetic words, and I'm happy to report that while all of us wish the numbers were larger, we now have 20 women serving in the United States Senate. It is hard to believe that when Eleanor Roosevelt's husband, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was running for the presidency, that she was kept waiting for over 3 hours by a local party leader with whom she had a scheduled appointment. That wouldn't happen today, and I can only imagine she must have been gritting her teeth through that whole experience. Now, Mrs. Roosevelt was a social progressive. She was a very active first lady, and some folks criticized her for that. She was confronted once about women's roles being in the home in this country, and she responded, "When people ask me if a woman's place shouldn't be in the home, I say with enthusiasm, it certainly is. But if a woman truly cares about her home, that caring will take her far and wide." That's exactly what all of you in this class demonstrate. You care about your home. I read your comments on the website. You love your family, you love your home, you love your pets. You're going to change the world, and you've got big dreams and big visions for yourselves. So you will always love home. But you represent Mrs. Roosevelt's statement in that caring will take you far and wide over time, and that's so exciting. So like everybody else, I've got a little bit of advice to give you from my years on this earth. Linda said we've known each other since our mid-20s, so it's only been 5 or 10 years worth of experience I have under my belt since then. But let me mention just about three. Exactly. Let me just mention about 3 things that have been important to me that I hope maybe you'll tuck away and use over time. The first is, and Linda mentioned my role on the Board of Regents, is that for all of us, be a lifelong learner. Don't ever stop learning. As leaders, this experience has been an immersion, but there's so much more to learn about being a leader. So it doesn't stop today when you cross this stage. Learning certainly doesn't stop when you graduate from high school in the next 2 or 3 years. It won't stop the day you cross the stage for your college commencement, or in the case of a couple of you all that are looking at medical school, it doesn't stop then. And you know what a fast pace we're all living in now, so be prepared to learn on a lifelong basis. The other thing I want to add parenthetically, and this was a life lesson for me, and one that I almost stumbled across too late in life, but again, I was fortunate in so many ways. I was not the best saver. I wasn't really into business. I worked in Washington. I thought I knew everything. I worked for the Majority Leader of the United States Senate. I never took the time to learn investments, to learn business. And I'll tell you, in the last decade or so of my life, I have learned, as important as it is to be in government, it is the business of business that drives America and drives our economy. Think about your retirement. Think about saving. Think about how you're going to pay for college. Think about learning a little bit about investments in stocks. You don't have to be a day trader, but just have a financial savvy as you go forward. And that can all be part of your lifelong learning. Think about what it would be like to run a complex organization. I inherited in my job a $25 million budget and work on a $600 million construction project at the Capitol Visitor Center. Never dreamed I'd be there. So talk about on-the-job training, but it was a phenomenal experience. I will also tell you as an aside, the Secretary of the Senate is the financial clerk of the Senate, and my dad, God love his soul, was a retired banker. When he heard that I was being appointed to this job, it struck fear in his heart because he knew I had never balanced a checkbook. And his question to me was, "Honey, I love you, but are you sure you can take on that part of the job?" And I assured him that there were people who had institutional knowledge and the skill set to do it. But by default, it was my responsibility. And so again, I learned, and I learned fast. So my encouragement to you is, be true to your vision. Do exactly what you want to do. But know that having that financial savvy, some business sense, will also serve you extraordinarily well along the way. And the last thing I would ask you to do, and this is no great surprise coming from somebody who's been in politics and government most of her life, be an engaged, active citizen. How many of you guys are involved in student government or have run for an office in a civic club? So almost everybody here. So you know the importance of campaigning. You know the importance of voting. Don't ever lose that. Register to vote when you hit 18. And when the doors are open in your local, state, and federal elections, turn out and encourage other people to do so too. Because as leaders, folks are going to look to you all. They're going to want to know who you're supporting. They're going to want to know what you're thinking about the important issues of the day. And Dawn especially knows how important it is for folks to be engaged in this process. And my hope for you all is, just like Dawn, that at one point too, you'll think about putting your own name on a ballot and making a difference, because it's a very bottom line difference you can make. So lifelong learning, including learning a little bit about the financial side of the house. Look out for each other. would be my third thing, too. As women, we're not always best friends to each other. We're competitive, and that's a good thing. But we need to look out for each other in life. We're a team. And I hate to say it, but there are still barriers that women have to knock down every day. There's strength in numbers, and there's strength among all of you in this room. So look out for each other, look out for your friends, look out for your families, and be strong as a team. It makes such a difference at the end of the day. So be a lifelong learner, remember to vote, be supportive of each other. And I said only 3, but I'm going to add in one more. And that is, just like my friend Linda, keep your sense of humor. We could all have a tendency to get too serious too quickly. And on your darkest days, that sense of humor and the ability to laugh or maybe sing a Patsy Cline song will serve you extremely well at the end of the day. I want to close with just a story of a woman I had to get to know in my time in the Senate. And as Linda mentioned, one of the joys of being in the Secretary's job is you've got your own staff of about 240, 250 people. You get to know a lot of Senate staff and work with them on a daily basis. But part of the job really is getting to know the members of the Senate. And out of the 100 members of the Senate, I won't say I knew everybody extraordinarily well, but there were some folks that I got to know better than others. That's like anything in life, right? And one of those was a woman named Elizabeth Hanford Dole. She was senator from North Carolina. She had served 2 presidents in very complex and visible jobs, one as Secretary of Transportation, one as Secretary of Labor, and then she went on to a remarkable job as the President of the American Red Cross. Mrs. Dole was a real mentor to me in so many ways. She described herself often as a Pied Piper of public service. She loved it. It was her destiny. And one day we were talking about women's issues, and she was actually giving some advice on a speech that I was going to make at my alma mater. And she told me a wonderful story about a tough conversation with her own mother. Her mother lived to be 101 years old. And she called her mother every day. And one day she chided me that I was not calling my dad every day. So another lesson learned. But this story occurred on the eve of her graduation from Radcliffe, which is now part of Harvard. It was the women's college at Harvard. She was having dinner with her parents, and she informed them that she'd enjoyed her educational experience so much, she wanted to continue that career. She wanted to go to law school. She said, "I know I disappointed my mother that night." She said, "My mother thought I would come home to North Carolina, probably get married, raise a family, maybe have a job along the way, but certainly not a full-fledged career." And she said, "I know my mother probably didn't get a very good night's rest that night." But the next morning before commencement, her mother came back to her and said, "Elizabeth, this is your little red wagon. All of us have had a little red wagon. And remember, you have your own little red wagon, metaphorically speaking, in your power. You're putting something in it today, a great accomplishment by going through this program. You'll be adding to it through the years. You already have dreams and hopes and goals and visions of what you want to accomplish for yourself and how you want to make a contribution to our great Music City and beyond. So keep pulling that little red wagon. You may find even you discard a few things along the way, but keep it full. Remember your dreams, remember those goals, and always remember, it is your little red wagon. Thank you for the chance to be with you today. Thank you. Sit in the chair. Yes, ma'am.
Is it on? Yes, I can hear it now. I want to take just a few minutes and maybe let the audience ask a couple of questions, and then I might ask a question too. How's that? Okay. Does anybody have a question for Emily?
Find your voice.
No,
I'll start. No one ever wants to start. I'll start.
Oh, thanks, Dawn.
For the video. Alrighty. I'll start. No one ever wants to start. What has been the biggest accomplishment of your life?
Oh. Yikes, that's a big question.
And personally and professionally.
Okay, thank you. I think professionally for me, it was the opportunity to be Secretary of the Senate. And so coincidentally, I'll say, and I told Senator Baker this one day, when I was in his office, where my desk sat, fast forward 20 years, and I'm back in the Senate, and in the Majority Leader's office, it probably wasn't the same piece of furniture, but there was a desk still in that same spot. And I tended to run through that office every day in the course of my daily business. And I remember telling Senator Baker one day, I don't think I've gotten very far because I'm walking past the same desk 20 years later. But it was just an extraordinary opportunity to make a contribution in my own little way to our country. And I know you feel it when you walk out of the state capitol. I really tried, no matter how hard the day was or how long the day was, when I headed to the car at night, to pause and look back at that Capitol dome, bathed in that beautiful light, and just think about the opportunity I had been given. So that will always be a very special 4 years. Personally, my greatest accomplishment, to be honest with you, it probably was helping take care of my mother. My mom had early onset Alzheimer's at age 57, younger than I am now. And she lived about 14 years. And I moved home to Tennessee when I knew we had a problem. And I was trying to get my dad to make some decisions, even down to, let's hire some help so you have some relief, right? And I look back on that now, and I think, you know what? I will never regret anything about that time. I came home. It changed my life in many ways. I even lived with my parents for the first year I was here just to try and help out. And I'm not tooting my own horn as I say this at all, but I did the right thing. And I got to be with her for those last few years. So not to be maudlin at all, it was a blessing for me in a way. And I'm glad I hit the pause button and did that. And thank you for asking.
Anyone else?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
What did you want to do when you were in high school, like as far as your career?
So let me back up and say, I was in extemporaneous speaking and debate right just across the way here at Hillsborough High School. So I wanted to talk all day long, every day. And I knew I liked politics, and I knew I liked communications and television and radio. So like you guys, I wanted to grow up and do something big, something fun. I also enjoyed singing, and that was fun. So I guess really the communications piece, the public speaking piece, politics, and like everybody else in this room, it's going to happen to you. Mine obviously took a few different twists and turns along the way, but I will say, the fundamentals that I got at Hillsborough, particularly in public speaking and debate and extemporaneous speaking, it is amazing what a foundation that has provided for me throughout my life. If it helps me think in terms of, how to address an issue, how to speak publicly, how to analyze a situation. I will forever be in the debt of a woman named Aldamita Landis, God rest her soul, who was my debate coach, and I treasure that time. So thank you for asking.
Okay. Let me ask a quick question. Sure. What leadership skill do you think helped you the most in your career?
That's a great question, too. So I think it may be, it's not that I can't be tough, but I think what's helped me more than anything is being nice to people, being fair to people, not being judgmental, if you will. I don't mean to imply that I've never had a tough conversation with people or that I haven't been difficult myself. That simply would not be true in any walk of life. But I think being open to people, showing people dignity and respect, and there's something I've learned in politics is that, and I hope all of you will carry this with you through, when you are on an upward trajectory, there are people who are coming down off their own trajectory. And you need to be nice to everybody, because at some point in time, you're going to cross paths with those folks again. And I don't mean to imply that you're going to like everybody or everybody's going to like you in return, but it's showing people some respect and dignity and offering a kind word when folks may really need a word of encouragement. You don't know the impact you might have at the end of the day. So my hope is people would say, I'm friendly, I'm open, I'm fair, I'm trustworthy. I guess that's it.
I think that's true, too. I want to just close with just one quick question about mentoring. Can you tell us what you think, how important is mentoring to young girls?
Oh, it's extremely important. And I was in thinking about this, I realized that in my life, and a lot of this, right, is being a product of the times in which you're raised. In my life, my mentors were probably more male than female. And I think they were probably more informal than formal mentors. Senator Baker, of course, was my boss. But he touched my life in so many ways. And in thinking about his mentorship, when I returned to the Senate as secretary, I tried to run the Senate, or my role in the Senate, I tried to run it just as he did. Both he and Senator Byrd were from very small towns. Huntsville, Tennessee is a hamlet in Scott County in East Tennessee. And that lesson learned from both of them of running the place like a small town was a huge lesson for me. Senator Byrd, always true to his roots, kept a photograph of the coal mining town in West Virginia that he was from in front of his desk. He saw it each and every day. So a reminder of our roots. The biggest mentor in my life, again, was a gentleman, and he was Senator Baker's chief of staff. And his name was Jim Cannon. And he was really mean. And if he was sitting in this room, I would say it in front of him because we laughed about it in the years before his death. The first year I worked for him, I thought, this is the hardest thing I have ever done. I felt like I couldn't do anything right. But after about a year, and it was really almost to the day, it's like the light bulb came on for both of us of either I was suddenly doing everything right, or maybe he had given in a little, or maybe, I had learned just enough from him, to learn to get by and to finally do things right and to accomplish things the way he wanted us to be running that office. So, but he had a huge impact in my life. And the 3 years after that we were together and the lifelong friendship that we then had were treasures. But as a mentor, he was tough on the front end, and my friend and boss still on the back end.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please, let's say a round of applause again for Emily.
Thank you all.
So happy to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to ask Melanie to come up and we will do our graduation.
The moment you've all been waiting for. Again, I'm Melanie Matthews. I am the program coordinator for Music City Girls Lead. I want to take this time to personally thank each of you in this room for making our third academy a success. Thank you to all the mentors and the faculty for your wisdom and expertise, and to the parents for getting your girls to each session. We thank you so much. I feel so honored to have this opportunity to get to know each of the 17 amazing young women over the past few Saturdays. Each and every young woman has impressed me beyond measure, and I'm honored to present them to you today. Ladies, please come to the front of the room, the left side of the stage. When I read your name, please join us to receive your certificate and to have your picture taken. We will also have a quick photo taken at the very end of graduation, so please don't leave too quickly. Girls, go ahead and come up. In the spirit of the 21st century communication, we asked each young woman to describe herself in a tweet. For those of you who don't know, a tweet is a 140 characteristic phrase on Twitter, the bluebird, that's what I call it. I will read each tweet after the girl's name, so please hold your applause when we are done. Gagana Bora, she goes to Martin Luther King Magnet School. Her tweet is, "A girl aiming to provide children with the best possible health care as a pediatrician. Hashtag caring about the little things." Congratulations. Oh. Ella Cameron. She goes to University School of Nashville. Her tweet is, "I am an accomplished, motivated outdoors person who endeavors to add something positive to every situation I find myself in. Hashtag the sun is up." Laura Easter. Laura goes to Station Camp High School. Laura's tweet, "I want to help children's lives. Hashtag children's lives matter." Tate Elliott. Tate goes to the University School of Nashville. Tate's tweet, "Sporty girl who loves to work with kids and hopes to brighten kids' futures through education. Hashtag determined Tate." Delaney Estrada. She goes to Cane Ridge High School. Delaney's tweet, "I love to cheer lead. School in my eyes comes first. I'm funny, outgoing, and nice," and she is. Hashtag college-bound cheerleader. Elizabeth Freeland. Elizabeth goes to Ensworth High School. Elizabeth's tweet, "I love spending time with family and friends, looking to thrive and shape the world. Things do not change, we change them. Hashtag make change." Margaret Gall. Margaret Gall goes to Harpeth Hall. Margaret's tweet, "Sharing my faith and talents to community through lifelong learning and following my core values. I want to improve my world wherever that may be. Hashtag 1 Samuel 12:24. Ellie Hildebrand. Ellie goes to Ravenwood High School. Ellie's tweet, "A music fanatic who enjoys spending time at the local library and her church home. Hashtag reading between the lines." Cassidy Hudgens. She goes to E.W. Grove High School. Cassidy's tweet, "I may be from a small town, but my heart is set for the top of the world. My goals and ambitions are unstoppable. Hashtag feminist." Elizabeth Kimbrough, we want to acknowledge her. She had to leave early, but I will say her hashtag. It's cute. Knowing the youth of today, we are the future. Helping build this, hashtag future. Jessica Lee. Jessica goes to Davison Academy. Jessica's tweet, "Confident, independent, happy, optimistic, hardworking, and I love to try new things. I also love sports." Michaela Lowe. Michaela goes to Beach High School. Michaela's tweet, "Friends, family, and sports are big in my life. I love hanging out with friends and also to take care of my animals. Hashtag pre-vet." Rujda Marani goes to Lipscomb Academy. Her tweet, "Kurdish American scholar striving to make the world a better place, peaceful through him. I love school, listening to One Direction, and spending time with my family. Hashtag call me Rue." Amy Wynn. Amy goes to St. Cecilia Academy. Amy's tweet is, "Studious and dedicated to volunteering. I strive to make the world a better place through community service. Hashtag my community first." Anna Sager, Lipscomb Academy. Anna's tweet, "A preppy Texas girl in a Tennessee world hoping to use God-given talents to improve the lives of others. Hashtag motivated monogrammer." Madison Shea in absentia, driving, darling, and dedicated girl who goes after her goals on and off the field, led by faith. And last but not least, Kiana Watson. She goes to Oakland High School. Kiana's tweet is, "Massive dreams, humble heart, and unstoppable drive. Hashtag utilizer, inner and outer beauty." Congratulations, girls. Okay.
Well, that concludes our program, but we'd like the girls to... No, it doesn't conclude our program. Linda's looking at me like, I have the last word here. And she does. But I think if girls, can you wait a minute for the final photograph, and then Linda will give our closing remarks. Sorry, Linda.
That's all right. I own my voice, so I would have gotten up here one way or the other. Owning your voice is one of the things that we've really focused on with all of you, and you have been amazing at developing your vision and owning your voice. So I wanted us to give one more round of applause to all of you and your dreams. At the end of every one of these academies, I reflect back on what we have tried to do in each one of your sessions. And at the beginning, we ask 3 questions, and we say we're going to answer those together. And those 3 questions come from Marshall Gantz, one of the great organizers of the 20th and 21st century, who teaches now at Harvard. One of the things that he says is that we have to develop a public narrative for change. And the way we get to that is by answering these 3 questions. Who am I? Who are we? And what can we do together? So the last 3 weekends we've been with you, we've looked at those. And so in the first session, you looked at your own strengths, and you talked with each other about how you could develop those strengths and how you could work together to make sure that each of you was using those strengths in the work that you did. We also looked at who are we, and you looked at the amazing diversity in Nashville and in Tennessee today, and the importance of recognizing that diversity as a strength, recognizing that we embrace those who are different because together we are stronger. And I love the way that you began to look at that as you worked in your groups. You have begun to reach across boundaries, just as Emily has done throughout her life. And finally, you looked at what can we do together. And I want to tell all of you that these students will be coming back on March 7th to reflect and show the results of 3 amazing projects that they are working on. Their groups have worked for the last 3 weeks to determine a need, develop a project, develop a timeline, develop branding and communication, and figure out just how they will be moving into the community to address the needs of children at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital, beautifying our parks by bringing flowers that are not there now to our parks, and finally, taking one elementary school here in Nashville, determining what is needed there, and working with them, with their resources at their schools to deliver those materials that are needed to that elementary school. So those are the big ideas they have just for changing Nashville and Middle Tennessee. We ended the first session by looking at 4 girls who changed the world. Because a lot of us have gray hair. A lot of us are kind of old ladies. Why should they listen to us, right? And I use old ladies as a very affectionate term, right? But we wanted them to see that it was the young women who have actually changed the world in so many ways. We started out talking about Esther. And you know the story of Esther in the Bible, how she had to be persuaded to use her place in the king's court and her beauty to save her people. We looked at Diane Nash, amazing civil rights worker and activist here in Nashville, who used her voice on the steps of City Hall here to challenge Mayor Ben West and to ask him, do you think it's right that we cannot sit at the lunch counter and eat with white people? And he paused and then gave the answer that made sure that Nashville was not Birmingham. Because Diane Nash asked him, he answered, no, it's not right. And the next week, The lunch counters were desegregated, and even though we had some problems in Nashville, it ran much more smoothly during the civil rights movement than it did in other cities in the South. And we can thank Diane Nash, who at the age of 19 asked that question. And then we looked at Malala, the young woman shot in the face because all she wanted to do was get an education in Pakistan. What did Malala use? Her courage. And that courage got her the Nobel Peace Prize, the youngest person ever. And then finally we looked at Monet, the pitcher, right? Who was on the cover of Sports Illustrated and who knew how to use her talent to change the world. So I know all of you are going to use everything you have, your voice, your talent, your vision, your courage to change the world. And we'll go back to Esther. Remember that Esther's uncle said to her, "How do you know that it was not for just such a time as this that you were placed in the king's court to bring about this change?" Think about it. You were placed here in Nashville as leaders for just such a time as this. Thank you for all you did. And thank you for coming. Please stay around. I'd love to meet all the parents. I know Pat and Emily would too. And thank you for supporting your girls today.
We're getting a group picture.
We're going to try to do a team picture up here, if you don't mind. Just come on up on the stage, just maybe 6 or 7 other people down there. You're going to stay right. 5 6. Okay. The rest of y'all.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. Thank you. Okay.
Now, we'll have to give it a look and see what it looks like. We'll adjust.
There we go. There we go. Thank you. Thanks for asking. That's great.